this is our first lesson on reasoning. There are three laws that we will be discussing when it comes to reasoning. And the first law that we're going to discuss is the law of detachment, which is also called direct reasoning. The words you're actually going to have to recognize are law of detachment. So for this one, I have two different versions of the same example. So the first one I'm going to look at is what's called the premise conclusion form. You don't need to know the words for that. So if I start with the first premise talks about the Venn diagram. Okay, so it's just about the Venn diagram. It's this first premise. So if we look at our Venn diagram, it states that all students go to school, because all of the students circle, that whole circle, is inside of the go to school circle. So that's the first premise. That would be something given to you. The second premise is about somebody specific. So this premise is specific, right? We're not talking about all marks, we're talking about a single mark. And when I put a single item into a Venn diagram, I mark it with an X. It's not a circle because it's not a set of marks. It's just one particular person named Mark. And because Mark is inside of the student circle, I know that Mark is a student. And again, I would start with the premise. That's what I would be given. I would need to create the Venn diagram. What I would be asked to do is create the conclusion. And so you create the conclusion. So I would be expected to come up with, well, what do I know about Mark? Well, if Mark is a student and all my students go to school, what do I have to know about Mark? I would have to know that Mark goes to school. So that's what I would be asking for you to tell me. So again, to recap, I would provide you with the two premises. What's circled in red is what you will be given. What you must provide me is this conclusion. You are going to provide me with that conclusion. So now we're going to do the exact same thing, except I could give it to you in a different form. So in the PQ form now, you would be given, this is what you would be given. From this, you would create the Venn diagram. Now, this is an if-then statement. So we have, if you are a student, that's my circle on the inside. Then you go to school. That's the circle on the outside. Then I know something specific. So here's my specific thing. Mark. I need to put Mark in the correct place. Mark is a student, so Mark has to go inside of the student circle. This is the conclusion. This is what I should come up with. Conclusion. And then you create this. What do I have to know about Mark? Well, if Mark is a student, Mark must go to school. So let's try another example. So here we have, the diagram has been given to you. So this is kind of backwards from what you will typically see. So let's start with, this is a premise, conclusion. So my first premise is general. It's about the Venn diagram. And the Venn diagram has one circle, which is soccer players, inside of a second circle, which is enjoy sports. So to write that, that means all soccer players enjoy sports. So I'm going to write that as my first premise. All soccer players enjoy sports. So here we have our first premise. Now, our second premise is going to be the specific one. So specifically, is there someone or something that I'm talking about? And there is. Specifically, I'm talking about Beth. And what do I know about Beth? Beth is located inside of the soccer player circle, which means Beth is a soccer player. So this is the specific thing about Beth. So at this point, what do I have to know about Beth? Well, if Beth is inside the soccer players circle, that means Beth is inside the enjoy sports circle. So my conclusion is that, I'm going to say it, I'm not going to write this. Once I know that Beth is a soccer player, I know that Beth enjoys sports. So my conclusion is that Beth enjoys sports. If you need a minute to write that down, go ahead and pause the video now. So what I would like for you to do right now, I would like you to try problem number 3. Now in problem number 3, we're writing it in PQ form, which means in if-then form. So you're going to start with your general if-then statement about the Venn diagram. Then you're going to write the specific statement about whatever we have, thing or person specifically in this problem. Then you're going to write your conclusion. So go ahead and please pause the video now and do number 2. And here is the if-then form for this particular Venn diagram. The if P then Q would be if the small circle, then the large circle. So if you live in Utah, then you live in the USA. My other premise is very specifically about Anne in this case, is dealing with Anne lives in Utah, and we also then would know once Anne is inside of the living in Utah circle, then we also know that Anne is living in the US. Now I did flip my P's and Q's here. Sorry, my colors are wrong. My P is the inside and my Q is the outside, so I apologize. So here we have that one. Next one, I would like for you to try this one as well. So again, we're putting this in PQ form, which is if-then form. The first one is very general about the Venn diagram. The second statement is very specific about Bob and where he is. The third statement is what we know from where Bob is located. So please pause the video now and do number 3. Here's my solution. The first statement is the general one about the Venn diagram. So it's if the small circle, then the large circle. If you are a 10th grader, then you take driver's ed. Where Bob is located, Bob is inside the 10th grader circle. So P is Bob is a 10th grader. Then finally, what do I then have to know about Bob? That means that Bob is taking driver's ed. So if you have any questions, go ahead and write them down on your paper about any questions that you have. And pause the video if you need to. I'm going to go ahead and move on to number 4 on the back. So on the back, I've just given you some information in a statement. So first thing that we need to do once we have this is we're going to make the Venn diagram. The second thing we're going to do is we're going to place the specific thing or person into the Venn diagram. And the third thing we're going to do is create our conclusion, and there won't always be one. So again, if you need to write that down, pause the video while I continue on. So for my if-then statement, the part after the if is my small circle inside the Venn diagram. So we have a letter that weighs less than 1 ounce. Okay, so we have letters that weigh less than 1 ounce. And if I have one of those, it requires 1 stamp. So requires 1 stamp is the outside circle. So anything that weighs less than 1 ounce requires 1 stamp. So that's step 1. Step 2, I'm going to place the specific thing. So my specific thing that I'm placing is Jane's invitation. So I need to figure out, where does Jane's invitation go in this diagram? Well, The weight of this invitation is 0.7 ounces, and that is less than 1 ounce, which means Jane's invitation is going to go inside the red circle. So I have Jane's invite goes right inside my red circle. So now I just need to write down my conclusion. So once Jane is inside the circle that weighs less than 1 ounce, Jane's invitation is also inside the circle that requires 1 stamp. So I now know that Jane's invitation requires 1 stamp. And this is how you're going to see questions on your assessments is like this. Sometimes we'll have it in premise, premise, conclusion. This one happened to be in if-then form. So number 5, if you need to pause the video to write that down, please pause the video now. I'm moving on to number 5. So for number 5, we have impressionist paintings emphasize the use of light. Let me reword that because there's no all, there's no some, there's no if-then in there. What that really means is all impressionist paintings emphasize the use of light. So that's the first step. That's my Venn diagram, and I know all of impressionist paintings. So my impressionist paintings will be on the inside of my Venn diagram, and emphasize the use of light. That will be my Venn diagram, my big circle on the outside of my Venn diagram. So I have impressionist painting. So all of my impressionist paintings must be inside the circle that emphasizes the use of light. So that's my general Venn diagram for that first statement. Next, I need to speak specifically about this. A famous impressionist painting is Monet's Water Lilies. Okay, so that's a lot, but what I know is Monet's Water Lilies is spelled wrong, is impressionist. So because it's of that style, it needs to go inside of the impressionist paintings. So I can put Monet's Water Lilies right here. So that painting by Monet is considered impressionist paintings, so it goes inside of my impressionist paintings circle. So now I can come up with my conclusion. What else do I have to know then about this painting called Water Lilies? Well, I must also know that water lilies emphasizes the use of light. So I'm going to say Monet's Water Lilies emphasized the use of light. Okay, and number 6. And again, if you need more time to write that down, pause the video now, please. For number 6, we have that A, B, and C are real numbers. Then we know this statement that A times the quantity A, B plus C equals AB plus AC. So that's where I'm going to get my Venn diagram. And even though there's a lot of things going on, the part after the if and before the then, that's the inside circle. So A, B, C, real numbers. The key is that these are real numbers, and there should be 3 of them. Next, I know that A times B plus C will equal AB plus AC. That's my large circle on the outside of my Venn diagram. So let's move on to the specifics. Specifically, these three numbers are real numbers. So I have that these numbers are real numbers. Now I'm going to go ahead and label them as A, B, and C. So I'm going to say A is 2, B is 1, and C is -8. So once I know that, then I can write my conclusion, which my conclusion is this distributive property, basically. So I'm going to know that I need to fill in my A. A is 2, parenthesis, B, which is 1, plus C, which is -8, close your parenthesis, equals A, which is 2, times B, which is 1, plus A, which is 2, times C, which is negative 8. So here's our conclusion for number 6. Again, if you need to pause the video to write that down, pause the video now, please. Moving on to number 7. Now, number 7, it says draw the corresponding diagram, so we need to draw the Venn diagram from the two premises, and explain why the following argument is invalid. So this is, they're saying that someone has made this conclusion down here, that this yellow truck is plastic, that that is actually invalid. They're telling us that to start with. We just need to explain why. So I'm going to start with the first premise, premise number 1, which is my general Venn diagram. So all plastic toys, so plastic toys, that's my small circle on the inside, are unbreakable. That's my circle on the outside. So I have my large circle on the outside, unbreakable. So now I need to talk about my second premise, premise number 2. I have a yellow truck that is unbreakable. Now this is where this one's different. The yellow truck doesn't go inside of the plastic toys. They didn't tell me the yellow truck was plastic. They told me the yellow truck was unbreakable. So my yellow truck could be here, which means, do I know without a doubt that this yellow truck is plastic? And no, I don't. And we know that possibly my yellow truck was in here, but I don't know for a fact that it had to be inside of the plastic toy circle. So I don't know without a doubt that it has to be there. I just know that it has to be inside of the unbreakable circle. So I know nothing else about this yellow truck except that it's unbreakable. So the yellow truck doesn't have to be inside of the plastic toys. Which means this is not a valid conclusion. So if I had just given you premise 1 and premise 2, you would just write there's no valid conclusion. And that is all that we would know. Now, please bring any questions you have to class. We'll be talking about the next 2 styles of reasoning. There's 2 more laws that we'll be talking about in class that will continue us on into all the different styles of reasoning next class. So have a wonderful evening.